we're running a bit late, but when you have a hall filled with such stars, I think it's worth of it. So without much ado, let me introduce you myself. I'm Dr. Vinodya Goswami, and I'm a faculty member of the CLC, the Center for Language and Communication. And today we all have gathered here for a national conference on fostering proper education in our millennial classrooms. If you continue to think the way you have always thought, you will continue to get what you have always got. Is it enough? So this morning we are here to find answers to this question. We as academicians, researchers, scholars, we all try to enhance our teaching learning process. We keep on experimenting with, never mind, technical glitches. So we all try and see the ways we can enhance and improve our teaching and learning techniques. And what better a conference could we have where we will be discussing the various ways, methods, ICTs, etc., which we can bring into our classrooms to enhance our teaching learning process. Moreover, in this technologically improved society, we need to update ourselves back up so that we can impart a proper education to our students. So, without much ado, I would like to let you know the people we have in the house today this morning. We have the Additional Director General, ADG, Sri Sanjay Kumar Singh with us today. We have Sri Sudhir Kumar Neelakantam, IPS, Asansol Durgapur Police Commissioner. We have Sri Zedin Patil, Dr. Zedin Patil. He's retired Professor of English and Head of the Department of Training and Development, EFLU Hyderabad. We have Dr. J. Mangaya Harisi. She's an Associate Professor of English at Etihad College of Women, Chennai. We also have our campus director, Professor Dr. Alok Satsanghi with us today. I would also request Professor Dr. Krishna Musarkar to let us know he's here as well. So I'll also invite Professor Dr. Saujanya Puri to please come up on the stage and let us have the lamp lighting ceremony to begin this auspicious conference. A big round of applause for all the people.
सामने चला जाइए सर। So join कर लीजिए।
Thank you so much, our distinguished guests. I would request you to please take your seats. So I request the dignitaries please come and take your seats on the dais, please. Patil sir, Krishnendu sir, please come up on the stage and take your seats. I request our campus director, Alok sir, please come up on the stage and take your seat. have a felicitation ceremony for our dignified guests who we have here today. I request Professor Dr. Krishnendra Sarkar to please felicitate Shri Sanjay Kumar Singh, Additional District General, Director General, I'm sorry. Can we have some claps, please? May I now request Dr. Professor Alok Satsangi to please felicitate Shri Sudhir Kumar Nilakandam, IPS, Asansol, Durgapur for this commissionerate. Please, sir. Some more claps, please. We deserve it. Thank you, sir. Now, may I please ask Dr. Satsangi to felicitate Shri Krishnendra Sarkar. Dr. Sarkar will be felicitating Dr. Zaid Patil as well. Okay, sir, please felicitate Dr. Zaid Patil. Now, may I please request Professor Dr. Saujanya Puri to felicitate Professor Mangai. Thank you. So before we start off any event, especially in our college, we make sure that we invoke the blessings of the divine. So may I please request Anushka Ghosh. She is our student from Bachelor's of Hospital Management. She will be singing a Saraswati Vandana to commence the two-day national conference on teaching and learning. Anushka, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. By paying respect to all the dignitaries, I am starting the program by shouting to one.
Thank you, Anushka, for the beautiful song. Um, so we move ahead with our program, and I welcome Professor Dr. Krishna Sarkar to deliver the welcome note of today's conference. He is the director of the LSHM School of Life Skills. So, sir, we warmly welcome you to deliver our welcome address for today.
Thank you, Dr. Dev, for the introduction which you already done, the very introduction. But as a formality and a proud privilege, I should take this opportunity from my left, Professor Sajjan Yakudi, Mr. Sanjay Singh, ATG, Professor Patil, the prime resource person for the conference, for both the days, Durgapur and Kolkata, Commissioner Mr. Kumar, Professor Manga, and Campus Director Durgapur, Professor Arav Sasangi. Of the guys, most importantly, each one of you. And all of you are looking so lovely. Right? Normally, this literature and language classes, as teachers, you ask them and they say, this is just an add-on. It is part of the curriculum. Basically, you're supposed to be an engineer. But this is just a part of the curriculum, what you do. But today I see happy faces, which is very, very good. I was in this conference room of this campus and meeting Professor Patil and some of his students, alumni included. And one of them is sitting here, Professor of Language and Women's College. If you can just raise your hand. Yeah. And I'm also thinking of the same lines. That when we talk about teaching of language and literature, the first and foremost which I feel is that we need to learn our mother tongue very, very well. We need to appreciate our mother because those are our first learnings. Those are the first introduction to the immediate surrounding, your family, right? And then to the larger community. You open the faculties of your mind and then unleash the freedom of your soul so that you can embrace this thinking, which can be critical or creative, first using your mother tongue only. Because many people have said, and they have researched it, that if you are good in one language, then you can pick up other languages as well. So it's very important to learn the mother tongue very, very well. Now, when I see this brochure which you have as part of the delegates, and it's very scary when I see these themes. And because it talks about, the role of language teachers in sensitizing the millennials regarding climate change. So this is very, very good. That even with language and literature, we cannot keep it in a kind of a silo and say this is also a kind of a course that we're supposed to learn. No, it is interdisciplinary. It is a part of the language that we can embrace science. It is because of language that you can also learn various other faculties of knowledge with arts, business, culture, humanities. The how to be a human, your identity as a human, don't on your power of language. The world of literature is a world of knowledge. Languages are just media. They are the media. They carry those messages of literature. So it is very, very important as CIV students, you cannot separate literature from language. Because language on its own cannot impact others until it is backed by the power of content, the power of literature. That's the power of language. So, we have, if you see Professor Barkley, the Professor of English and Head of the Department of Training and Development at EFLI Hyderabad, and President of LTI. LTI is the knowledge partner here, and LTI has been a pioneering model agency for the teaching of English language. Then we have Professor Manga here. We will be benefiting hugely from the insights of these people, not to mention Dr. Monotosh Dasgupta, who will be joining us on the other days. Professor Gautam Banerjee, Professor Santur Banerjee, Mr. Partha Pratim Das, Dr. Abhishek Mukherjee, Dr. Abhik Mukherjee. Dr. Abhik Mukherjee was here with NSSL Durgapur. Abhik, where are you? Oh, that's it. And then he was in BIT and then now in Exile University of Malaysia. Dr. Ananya Shah as well. And along with these names, there are many other names which probably I am unable to mention here. But I'm sure that when you meet with each one of them in the sidelines of this conference, in the corridors, the confines of your venue. So this conference has a lot of promise. As I said, the themes are all very contemporary. It will draw those expand knowledge and skills from the presenters and the authors. And we will be able to appreciate that if you are able to tackle one of those most pressing problems pertaining to this environmental crisis, got into this climate change, English, sorry, not English, but of any other language, and the power of literature will be very, very important because it's interdisciplinary. If it is science, then there will be literature of science, which will enhance the power of scientific communication. Similarly, with business literature, literature from arts and humanities, the language will accordingly create its own direction and pathways. Important thing is to understand that language is our identity. We should be proud of our language. And if we are Indian, then we should be very, very proud of our Indian languages. As teachers and educators, we have an additional role, right, beyond our syllabus, beyond our curriculum, to ensure that we are able to instill this value. This is the most important value system which probably we can teach to a child, we can teach to a learner, we can teach to a teacher, educator, any professional is that please appreciate language. Please do not dilute this language, right? And even if it is social media, a lot of people and critics say that probably you are spoiling the literature. But that is again something to do with communication and in the informal side. From the formal aspects of communication, let us value our language. Government of India has already allowed the teaching of Indian languages, using those Indian languages in the classrooms as well. So if the world believes that programming has to be in English, but as Indians, we also have a responsibility to say that Sanskrit is much more better than English. And ask countries like Germany, and ask a lot of people who are working with neural networks and artificial intelligence. And I'm sure if you have chat GPT today, which draws from the power of language and literature to give you back answers, right? To write poetry for you, stories for you, essays for you, and thesis for you. But then think about the language of Sanskrit, which, of course, will be creating the most robust and resilient operating system of tomorrow, based on which your AI, ML, and all the stuff probably will express. And that's where India will figure in. Well, with this little introduction, I again take this opportunity to welcome each one of you. Please enjoy this campus. I think Dr. Patil was sharing that he's loving this campus, and that's great. And beyond the campus, also the city has a lot of kind of good assets for each one of you. If you are from State Durgapur, please enjoy your discourse, which probably of this day, and also participate from the other things you can in Kolkata. So all things put together, we are looking forward to a very rich kind of an exchanges and interactions in the house. Thank you, each one of you, for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring and kind words. Thank you so much. Now, may I please have the honor to invite Professor Dr. Saudya Puri, who is the convener of this conference, to please come up and deliver the convener's address.
Good morning and warm welcome to the esteemed guests who have come today. And warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us both online and offline. It was almost 4 months before when our team was actually grappling with the post-pandemic millennial classroom, when we were thinking about how to make our classes more interesting and engage the students, just not in the communication class, but in other ways as well, in other classes as well. We thought, why not we have a debate and a discussion about it? In this direction, I guess the team went ahead to propose a conference on this line, and we had great support from our management and our team, who had given us a lot of support to go ahead with this. Well, we are talking about a millennial classroom, and all of us, both be it parents or be it, officials, who are in the government, to teachers, everyone is grappling with the problem of how do we deal with these millennials, and more so the millennial classrooms. How can you make the classes more interesting and get the students into the classroom because everything is available on the internet. In this connection, we had sought out and went up to ask a lot of these professors who are here today, and I thank all of them for giving their time and being present here. And I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting our ADG sir, Mr. Sanjay Singh. And incidentally, I realized he is an language enthusiast too, and he's an author. So I thank him for his presence here today. And we had the Commissioner, Mr. Sudhir Kumar, also has shown great interest because he proposed that we could look at some training sessions, in terms of government officials and others. And then we went on to talk to all our esteemed panelists seated here, Professor Patil, my professor, and from FLU, Mr. Z.N. Patil, and not to forget Dr. Mangai, the happening lady of LTI, who has made time to come here to be with us today. And we have Mr. Gautam Banerjee, Mr. Shantanu Banerjee, and we have Mr. Ananda Modak and Mr. Abik, who has been my colleague, and of course Shantanu Yogi, who has here will be joining in the panel discussion today. Well, this conference had about 6 and the communication track. We have the literature track, and we also have eco-fiction. We are also looking at participants and presenters who are present here today, and I, on behalf of NSHM Center for Language and Communication, extend a warm welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Puri, for the introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm basically not a literature person. Like she said, I'm a language enthusiast. But if you ask me anything about theories of literature, I would be totally easy. But yes, I like reading books, and I'm also I'm not an author yet. It's author in making. Like it's true, right? So hopefully it will be an author very soon. So I was interested to see what exactly this conference is about, which is related to about my place of work. This idea about the use of language. She mentioned that it will be basically about the use of language in climate change. So let's start with that. Language, there are, from my point of view, there are experts here, and I would request their acceptance of the fact that I may be technically wrong. I mean, I don't have any theoretical knowledge about this, but it's my layman's fluency. There are two aspects. One is the formal, we use it as a means of communication, which is what I think most of you are doing it. You are not literature students. You are professionals, maybe engineers or maybe in hotel management, or you're doing this because it's a universal bridge. India's growth story in the IT sector. One of the main reasons was that India had studied English, whereas China had not. China had better mathematics, but when the dot boom happened in the 2000s, business couldn't go to China. Business came to India because Indians could speak, particularly South India, Bangalore was the hub. They could speak English, and that's how it started. So you can imagine what a great boon it was that our forefathers had this foresight of, let us say, not being very jingoistic about English, as I see a lot of children be, as a foreign language. It's a universal language after all, and it's a bridge with it. So that is one aspect. And they say in today's world, there is no skill which is more important than networking. Almost everything is based on interaction of people. research, if you are in research, uh, even research, for example, which used to, I mean, I'm giving the extreme example. Anything else is very obvious, learning management or any kind of work, working with. But even in research, there is no unidimensional research. It requires always multidisciplinary and a lot of coordination and networking. And so, I suppose language is ultimately the bedrock of that, all that communication. So it's very important for you, whatever profession you are, to have a good grip of formal communication. That is the formal part. So you have to speak as the other person would expect you to speak. You have to interact as the other person would expect. You have to, your accent has to be as far as possible. You know, an Indian can never speak English as an Englishman. It's genetic. It's there's research on this. For example, there are a lot of things. Like, I mean, if you there's no way that an Indian can speak English like our tongues are different. For example, just to give you some funny anecdotes. For example, like if you ask a Punjabi to speak measure, they cannot say measure. They say player or player, measure. So, for example, the word theory, like I just cannot. I will say theory like an explosive sound. Chop. While for the Englishman, it's a theory. I mean, I can't replicate that. So, but as far as possible, to be acceptable and at least to communicate. That is one aspect, and the other aspect is vernacular. It's ultimately a means of speaking language. And language is evolving. Vernacular has evolved. The vernacular part of language is evolving. It is not formal. You know the theory about what you were saying, Mr. Sarkar was saying, if you are good in one language, you are good in all languages. But I believe it's too late to start teaching language once you are 20 years old or 17, 18 years old. I mean, there is a very solid research on that we have a language instinct. There are genes in our brains, which are basically like, you can Google Stephen, Professor Stephen Pinker. He's one of the foremost researchers on language, apart from Noam Chomsky or others. So he's got a book called The Language Instinct. So there's a research about how the human brain, it has a innate pattern for language. And this is how we are born. So children, let us say up to the age of 6 or 7, I believe, they can pick up language like fish takes to water. I remember I was posted in Manipur for 2 years, and my daughters who were like 4 years and 6 years at the time, they were speaking Manipuri like I was amazed. And they forgot it equally quickly. Once they came back, they forgot it equally quickly. But they're very, in fact, my first words of my younger daughter was something like in Bengali, because she was hearing it from all around. So children pick up language very quickly, and they modify language. That's how the Creole languages are born. These are the languages of Central America or Africa, where the slave trade was there, and the young children would hear their masters speaking and pick up something. They would just ears are enough. They would pick up and replicate, and then they would adapt that into their native vernacular, like the way they are speaking. So they're very sweet languages. Language. I think there are about 1,000 Creole languages, and they're very sweet, and they communicate an emotion. Language communicates an emotion. That's the vernacular part. That's equally important. That's for your, I would say, the soul, if not for the mind. Which brings us to the last point, which I want to speak to you on, like the use of literature. You may read numerous articles on climate change. They may be very scientifically researched, very cogent, and very coherent. But if you read, they will not make a deep impact. They will not, maybe they will inspire you, but they won't very emotional connect. But if you read, let's say, The Gun Island by Amitabh Ghosh, or when you read his The Hungry Tide, or when there are people who are going through, human beings who are going through the travails of caused by climate change, villagers who are seeing their islands being submerged and so the ones, then you will connect. And that image will stay with you forever. If you read that book 10 years ago, you will always remember that. If you read an island, you will always remember how the whole island in that 80s somewhere is being surrounded by waves and all. So, how it's related to, for example, climate change, how it's related to migrations of populations. Not only is, they say climate change is the big death facing us. We keep on fighting about, such petty things. we keep on fighting about ideology, Russia, Ukraine, this, that. All this is meaningless. Climate change is the big death just coming towards us, and it's coming very steadily, and it will definitely kill its immediate communities. There's no question about it. And it's coming so slowly that people are failing to notice it. It's, the awareness of what is happening is very important. How it impacts not just the ecology, but the entire human race. So anyway, it's very nice to be addressing you, and pardon me for not having any academic qualifications to speak to you. I'm basically a police officer, but I also read books. I also like languages. So I would like to say to Professor Marwani, because I picked up various languages, Tamil or other Spanish, but I basically like languages. So with that, I thank you all. Thank you.
It comes as a pleasant surprise when we hear the AG speaking on Hungarites and such books which we have been going through. So thank you, sir, for your inspiring words and very nuanced understanding of language and communication. May I now have the privilege to call upon Sri Sudhir Kumar Neelakantham, who would be delivering his speech and communicating with our audience. Welcome, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. I believe I would be the least connected person in the present conference that's going to happen for the next 2 days. So I was just going to the brochure. So I'll try to speak something which makes sense to you and today's conference from my way. But from the brochure I can understand that it is a 2 days here and 1 day Kolkata conference, wherein the topics and themes are given, over which you will be making your own presentation, which would be, I guess, the panelists would be seeing through them. So what I understand from that is that there are 3 aspects which I found to be relevant for the conference. One is the language, the second is the effective communication, and the third element is the knowledge component. Because the kind of things that were mentioned are not normal, I would say, regular topics. So among all the themes, one theme which I felt is most relevant, because when I was seeing, when I was hearing to Mrs. Sojan, the concept of this thought of complex outcome that they were dealing with the students in the COVID times. So one thing which I felt more interesting among all is that I would say that the role of what I would say video games in the present scenario and relevance of the video games and how they can. So I'm sure that you guys will be presenting your papers and all. I won't be there to witness all. I'd like to just say a few things about that. Can the communication be possible without speaking something? Okay, now I'll ask. Can the communication be possible with the silence? Yes. Without the silence, communication is impossible. Please understand that in the effective communication, it is about what you hear, what you listen. For that, you have to maintain some silence. There is one person in our country, there might be many, whom I heard about, but he has spent 37 years with his silence life. Later on, he has become a guru, Baba, ashram setter. I think he is from South India, Tamil Nadu. You may explore that. Why I'm saying is that we talk about good English, we talk about many things. But I find that somewhere we forgot that what we have to hear, rather than what we have to speak. Now, I don't want to lecture on that, but coming to your themes, it is about the attention span. When there are mobiles, naturally you tend to get disturbed. When there are so much of electronic gadgets or whatever it is, there is internet, everything. So you tend to get exposed to many things which keeps you distracted and your attention span gets reduced. You were lucky that at least I studied during the times when mobile was not used. So those days, like, I mean, compared to that, now the millennial classroom, I was just trying to understand the meaning of it. Basically, I studied in my regional medium, that is Telugu, till my 12th class. After that, I have to pick up English, prepare for the civil services and come. Now I am in a very peculiar scenario, wherein in my house I have to speak to my wife in Hindi, with my mother in Telugu, with my colleagues in Bengali, with my superiors in English. Let me tell you, I can give you my own experience and I can say that by learning the multiple languages, we all should be proud that like we have a mother tongue. Come what you say, that like it is the mother language, mother tongue, through which you will learn the other languages. So being a Telugu medium guy, when I'm learning English, it might be unconscious after some time, but it is the conversion of it. That like how to make a sentence, how to speak all those things. So you cannot forget the mother tongue, even like as part of your professional and what I would say, futuristic purposes, you are focusing upon the English. But at the same time, I don't want to confuse the students, saying that like, learning some foreign language like English is something that like at the cost of some, beginning of your mother tongue. Please don't say it. I mean, you should have the pride in mother tongue, but at the same time, prepare for the futuristic things like think global, act local sort of thing. So that confusion should be ended up there only. And while learning multiple languages, I see the difficulty that like over a period of time, if I'm speaking like I said, various places, various languages, it impacts your thinking. This hence told in the psychology also. The left brain, right brain concept, which is important for the language learning, that gets impacted if you are learning multiple languages. So there is another different aspect which I just want to mention and leave it. So overall, I would like to say that having good knowledge will definitely make your speech or like your communication more enriched. But at the same time, I would say that like it is your ability to aspect other aspects of the communication. If you try to grasp those things, you will be effective communicator. So with these words, I wish you all the best, and I again request the distinguished faculty and also the professors that if there is something that whatever you can feel that like help us in improving our communication skills in my department. So I would like to take your assistance. I would like to thank you all for inviting me here, and thank you for your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's such pleasant surprises that we hear IPSs talking about language and communication, and we understand the universal value of communication, right? So right now, the silence in this room must be having multiple interpretations as well. So without much ado, I now call forth for a very most awaited event right now. We'll be having the release of our book of abstracts. And to do the needful, I request Madam Solinapuri along with our other faculty members to please hand over the book of abstracts to our distinguished guests. And we have some claps, please. People really work hard for this. This days and nights of untiring hard work has gone into it. So I hope we can reward it with some nice claps in the seminar hall, please. Here we go again. Some more claps. Thank you. All our participants, you have your abstracts which have been printed into this beautiful book. And it is a huge honor to have such distinguished, eminent guests in the house who are doing the needful. immense pleasure and privilege to commend the first in the series, our very own CLSE conference. Now we are pleased to request Professor Dr. Krishnendu Sarkar to felicitate our campus director, Sir, Professor Dr. Alok Satsani. He has been very supportive throughout the conference. He has extended all his help, his resources to make this event a successful one. A big round of applause for Dr. Satsani. Thank you, sir, for your inspiration and constant support. Now we move on with our program further. We are pleased call upon Professor Zedin Patil. He is a retired professor of English and the head of the Department of Training and Development, EFLU Hyderabad. He is also president of LTI Pune chapter. So a very long-awaited keynote address from Patil sir. So sir, the stage is all yours.
Will you please take your seats?
Yes. Very good morning to you, friend. Let me at the very outset say a big thank you to the honorable dignitaries on the dais and also to my participants here. Now, several years ago, I was reading a copy of the Times of India. And in that particular copy of the Times of India, there was an article. And who was the author of the article? The author of the article was Shashi Tharoor. And when I read that particular article by Shashi Tharoor, I riveted my attention, I focused my attention on one specific point that he was driving at. What was that point? The point was like this. Shashi Tharoor said that when you looked at the list of terrorists across the globe, you were amazed and you were stunned by one particular fact. And what was that fact? The fact was that most of the terrorists coming from different parts of the world specialized in technology, in science, in computer science, in physics and chemistry. None of the terrorists specialized in literature. Now, literature plays a very significant role in our life. In fact, why do we read literature? We read literature for a variety of purposes. For example, I can read literature to entertain myself, to delight myself, to amuse myself, to pass time when I'm traveling, for example. Or I read literature to instruct myself, to learn lessons from literature. We read Shakespeare, for example, we read Othello and Macbeth and King Lear and Hamlet because we want to draw certain lessons. We want to learn something from these protagonists or villains and so on and so forth. Now, the topic today that we are going to address, the topic that we are going to talk about today is very significant. There are two important words in this title. One is literature and the other one is communication. Now, let me cite some anecdotes relating to this particular theme. You know, once upon a time there was a lady fish seller. There was a woman, she was in a marketplace and she was selling fish. Now she was waiting for some customers to come and buy some fish from her. Now one customer came and bought some fish and said to the woman, the lady, fish vendor, "Excuse me, madam, why do you need the word?" Because she had a placard. Standing in front of her, and words on the placard were fresh fish for sale. Only 4 words were written on the platter. Fresh fish for sale. Now the customer came, bought some fish from her, and said to her, "Excuse me, madam, why do you need the word fresh? Because all of us can see that the fish that you're selling is fresh." So she got rid of, or she did away with, she removed the word, deleted the word fresh. She was left with 3 words. Fish for sale. Another customer came after 5-10 minutes and bought some fish from her and said to her, "Excuse me, why do you need the word fish? Because we can see that you are selling fish. You're not selling eggs or meat." And she listened to the advice given by that particular customer and she removed the word fish. She was left with 2 more words, for sale. A third customer came and said to her, the third customer came and bought some fish and said to her, "Excuse me, don't you think that the words for sale are redundant and unnecessary? Because this is a marketplace and people come here to buy and to sell. So I don't think you need these words for sale." And finally she removed all the 4 words. She had no platter, she had no advertisement, and after that, no customer came to her. So this simply proves the fact that we need to advertise, we need to communicate. And when we communicate emotions and feelings and thoughts and ideas and information and so on and so forth. Now, when we communicate, we need to be very careful. I would like to refer to some of the points that were discussed by Honorable Professor Sarkar. He said that we need to respect our mother languages, our first languages, our mother tongue. Now, there are quite a few people, especially in the field of English language teaching, who assume that mother tongue is a hindrance, right? Because they say that there are so many differences between Bangla and English, or Marathi and English, that these differences interfere, with the process of language acquisition. In my opinion, our mother tongue does not only interfere, it also intervenes. Interference is a negative expression, intervention is a positive term, because there are so many similarities, and Chomsky talks about language universals. There are so many similarities between Hindi and English, or Marathi and English, or Bangla and English, Telugu and English. So we should tap these similarities and we should facilitate the process of language learning, language acquisition. Now, when we talk about communication, we talk of so many things. And I'm going to say a few things about body language or non-verbal communication after a couple of minutes. Now, something very terrible happened in the sky over New Delhi several years ago. I think it happened about 40 years ago. A Kazakhstan cargo plane was descending, right? One plane, that was Kazakhstan cargo plane, not a passenger plane. A Kazakhstan cargo plane was descending at Delhi airport, and a Saudi Arabian passenger plane carrying 350 passengers and 19 crew members was ascending. And because the Delhi, air traffic controller had one sort of accent, and the Kazakh pilot had another kind of accent, and the Saudi pilot had a third kind of accent. So there was some problem understanding each other. And within a minute or two, the Kazakh cargo plane and the Saudi Arabian passenger plane collided head on, and all the passengers on board the Saudi Arabian plane perished, along with the crew members, of course. And all those crew members on board the Kazakhstan cargo plane also perished, also died, because they couldn't communicate effectively. So effective communication skills are very, very important. Now, one of our dignitaries spoke very briefly about body language. Now, body language is culture bound. Body language is culture specific. Body language is not universal. And he also said something about silence. I think you know or you have heard of a poet called John Keats. Right? Have you heard of the poet John Keats? In one of his poems, in one of his odes, he says, "Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter." So what is said is important, but what is left unsaid, what is left unspoken is sometimes more significant, more important. So silences are important. Now, let me say a word or two about body language, because that was also briefly touched upon by one of our dignitaries, one of the speakers. Now, as I said, non-verbal communication, when we communicate, it is said that almost 70 to 75% of communication happens through body language, and only 20-25% of communication happens through language, that is verbal language, words, utterances, sentences, and so on and so forth. Now, once upon a time there was a boy. The boy, once upon a time there was a boy. The boy's maternal grandmother came from one culture, and his paternal grandmother came from another culture. His mother's mother was from one culture, his father's mother was from another culture. One fine day, his mother's mother, his maternal grandmother, narrated a story to him. And while he was listening to the narration of the story by the grandmother, he was all the time staring at the floor. He never established eye contact with the grandmother. As soon as the grandmother finished narrating the story, she gave a flip. She gave a slap in the cheek. And she said to the boy, "Look here, my child, my boy. In my culture, I am your mother's mother. I am your maternal grandmother. In my culture, when a senior person, an elderly person is talking to you, you are supposed to look that person in the eye. You are supposed to establish eye contact. But when I was narrating my story, you were looking all the time looking at the floor. You never looked me in my eye." So he learned a lesson from the maternal grandmother. Right? After a month or so, he went to the other grandmother, and the other grandmother one fine day narrated a story. And when he was listening to the story, while he was listening to the story told by the grandmother, maternal grandmother, he stared at her. See? He established long eye contact with the grandmother. As soon as the grandmother finished narrating the story, she gave a slap in the other cheek of the boy. And she said to him, "Look here, my boy. In my culture, I'm your father's mother. In my culture, when a senior person is talking to you, you're not supposed to look him or her in the eye. That means you don't respect the person." So, the boy learned two lessons. That in one culture, eye contact is okay. In another culture, eye contact is not alright, not okay. Eye contact is interpreted, understood differently in two different kinds of culture. Now, let me say a word or two about the distance that we maintain between ourselves and our listeners or communicators. Once upon a time, there was a negotiation deal going on. And one of the negotiators was an Arab gentleman, and the other one was an American. You know that Arabs are very physical in their approach. They would like to hug you, they would like to touch you, right? So they are a very warm culture, physical culture. So one of the two negotiators was an Arab gentleman. The other person was an American. Americans want to maintain distance between themselves and their co-communicators, co-speakers, right? Now, they started their negotiation, their discussion at 10 o'clock in the morning after breakfast, and they were here. They were in this corner of the hall. By the time it was lunchtime, they were found in the fourth corner because the Arab gentleman wanted to be close to the Americans, but the American wanted to avoid physical contact. So physical contact and physical distance that we maintain between ourselves as speakers and our listeners is also culture specific. But there is nothing universal, right? Now, we are going to talk about using literature to enhance communication skills. Now, I would like to illustrate this point. I always believe in citing examples and illustrations because things become clearer, crystal clearer when we cite examples and when we quote some sayings or proverbs or some dialogues from different sources. Now, we use language to perform different speech acts, different speech functions. For example, we ask for information, we provide information, we make requests, we apologize, we express gratitude, we want to find out different things from different sources, different people, right? So these are language functions. Request requesting, apologizing, thanking, and so many other functions are there. Asking for information, providing information, etc., etc. Now we can do these, we can perform these language functions in a very bland manner, in a very prosaic way. For example, let's say, let me draw your attention to the last 4 lines of the poem called "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening" by an American poet called Robert Frost. The last 4 lines are like this: "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." Now, what happens is teachers teach poetry in a classroom, learners or students study poetry in a classroom, and the moment they go out of the classroom, teachers and learners, teachers and students, they forget that literature inside the classroom. Now, what we need to do is we need to carry literature from within the 4 walls of the classroom and take it to the society out there and use it to perform certain speech acts or speech functions like complimenting, thanking, etc., etc. Now, how can we use these 4 lines, for example, to perform a speech act? Now, suppose Saujanya ji, throws a party this evening, right? You don't have to worry. So Saujanya ji throws a party this evening, and I am one of the people participating in the party, enjoying the party. It's 9 o'clock in the evening, and I receive a phone call from one of my friends. So I can go to her, and she is the host, I am a guest. I can go to her and I can take her leave in a prosaic manner, in a very dry and dust manner. So Janji, I'm sorry, I have to leave now because my friend wants me to be there. This is a very ordinary way of taking leave of people. But I can use these 4 lines to perform the same function. For example, I can go to her and say, Saujanya ji, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now, in my opinion, this particular way of taking leave is more effective, more efficient, because it enhances, it improves the texture of my communication skills. Now, you may argue, but Professor Patil, what you are saying is okay, but there are limitations. For example, if the other party doesn't know Robert Frost, if the other person is not familiar with these 4 lines of the poem, what happens? He or she doesn't understand what you are trying to say. Now, my answer to this hypothetical question is, the listener may not be familiar with these 4 lines. The listener may not be a literature student, but I'm sure on the basis of the tone of my voice, the listener will be in a position to interpret these poetic lines in a legitimate manner. Right? Tone of voice is very important. And I always talk about tone of voice, and I'm going to cite an authentic example. I was in Vietnam, and I was sent to Vietnam to develop communication skills like future diplomats, prospective diplomats. And I was there at the Institute for International Relations for nearly 3.5 years on behalf of the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. So I one day decided to carry out an experiment. And what was that experiment about? The experiment was about the tone of voice. The tone of voice plays a very significant, very vital role in communication. Right? The tone can be friendly or unfriendly. The tone can be warm or frozen. The tone can be challenging, hostile, etc., etc. So there was one lady vegetable vendor in Vietnam, in Hanoi. Hanoi is the capital of Vietnam. I used to go and buy vegetables from her almost every day. One day I said to myself, why can't I carry out my experiment on this lady, because she doesn't have English, right? The only English that she knew was limited to few words and expressions. For example, she knew good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. And she also knew expressions like thank you, sorry, fresh, stale, not fresh, cheap, expensive. That was the end of her English. So I said, let me try my experiment on this particular lady. One day I went to her, bought some vegetables, and I looked at her and I said, you are a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb. This is what I said to her. What did I say to her? You are a noun, a verb, an adjective, and adverb. Now, she didn't understand the words noun, verb, adjective, adverb. She wasn't a teacher of English. She wasn't a teacher of English. She didn't know English. She didn't know the words noun, verb, adjective, adverb. But even though she didn't know these words, even though she was an illiterate person as far as the English language was concerned, she could understand, and she gave me a very broad, mouthful smile. Now, why do you think that she gave me a broad smile? Because on the basis of my tone, which was very friendly, which was very warm, and maybe a little romantic, she concluded that probably I had paid a huge compliment to her. Probably she thought that I had said something like, you are so beautiful, so magical, so gorgeous, electrifying, transporting, mesmerizing. Had I said anything like that? No, I hadn't said anything like that. But she thought I had said something like this, and she thought so on the basis of my tone of voice. So when we talk about communication skills, we should keep in mind the importance of tone of voice, and we should use appropriate tones when we communicate with people. So, poetry or literature can be used to perform several functions, and one function that we saw is, some time ago, some 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, was taking leave, right? So I took leave of Sarojini using Robert Frost's 4 lines. Suppose I'm a teacher teaching here in this particular beautiful institution, and Sarojini is another teacher. But I'm a very poor classroom manager. Imagine that I'm a very poor classroom manager, and she is a wonderful class manager. And after the class, my class is adjacent to her class, right, next to her class. And because I'm a very poor classroom manager, I couldn't control my students. There was a lot of commotion, a lot of noise in the classroom, and she couldn't concentrate on her teaching. And after the class, she came out and she said something to her colleague, right? I'm also her colleague, but she said something to the third colleague. And she actually wanted to criticize me. She wanted to say that I was a very poor classroom manager, and because I couldn't control my class, there was lots of noise, and she couldn't teach properly. That is what she wanted to say. But she said the same thing using WBX, right? In one of the poems, WBX says, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The title of the poem is The Second Coming. The Second Coming, right? So turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. In this poem, the falcon means man, humanity, mankind, and falconer means God, the Creator, the Supreme Father. So the poet says, turning and turning in the widening gyre. Initially, man was very close to God, but now man has gone away from nature, from the divine being. So he says, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. In the classroom management context, who is the falconer? The teacher. And who is the falcon? The student. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, this is what Sarojini said to another colleague about me, right? Without directly criticizing me or my classroom management skills. She said, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. That means, in my class, there was anarchy, there was chaos, and I was the falconer. I was the controller, teacher, and my falcon, my students, didn't listen to me. They didn't pay attention to what I was saying. So what I'm saying is we can use WBX's lines to criticize people. And if I say to Sarojini, were you talking about my poor management skills? She would say, who said that? I never said that. I never criticized you. I was talking about WBX. Right? So that is what I mean when I say that we can use literature to perform different functions. Now, for example, now I am 74 years old. Suppose I continue to live up to 99, 100. And Shantanu? Shantanu is a very young man. After 25 years, he meets me somewhere in Maharashtra or in Bengal. And he said, Professor Patil, do you remember me? We met in Durgapur. And I'm almost 100. I'm just imagining a situation. And I say, oh, yeah, Shantanu. And then I can quote those lines from Daffodils. For example, for oft when on my couch I lie in vacant or intensive mood, you flash upon that inward eye. I make little changes here and there. So for often, for oft when on my couch I lie in vacant or intensive mood, you flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with you as daffodils. What a beautiful way of remembering people. That I remember you, and occasionally you flash upon my inward eye, right? And then I become very happy when I remember you and our long time association. So this is what I mean. How much time do we have? 5 minutes? Okay. So in essence, what I'm saying is something very simple. Nothing extraordinary about this. That in order for us to be in a position to enrich our communication skills and enhance, improve the quality, the texture of our communication skills, we can sprinkle some poetic lines, some quotations from here and there, and we can communicate more efficiently and more effectively. Now, can we learn English? Can we enrich our vocabulary and strengthen our grammar and sensitize ourselves and our students with stylistic devices using the story, for example? I narrate a story, and please forgive me if I go beyond 5 minutes, maybe 6, 7 minutes. So I'll narrate a story, and I'll demonstrate with a couple of examples how we can learn vocabulary and we can strengthen our grammar using a short story, for example. A young and impressionable moth once set his heart. You know moth? Moth flies around a flame and gets burnt because moth is considered to be a symbol of sacrifice and love. So a young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star. He fell in love with the star, not with the flame. So a young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star. He told his mother about this, and she counseled him to set his heart on a bridge lamp instead. Right? Now let's look at this small fragment, small part of the story, since our time is limited. A young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star. Full stop. First sentence, opening sentence. He told his mother about this. Now we can draw the attention of the learners or students to the word this. We can ask them little questions. Okay, let's look at this word this. He told his mother about this. Now, how many words does this little word, this one word, replace in the story? Now, they have to go back to the first sentence. What is the first sentence? A young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star. Full stop. He told his mother about this. Now, this can be expanded, right? In its full form. This means he told his mother that he had set his heart on a certain star. How many words? Nearly 10 words. Now, when we communicate, we try to avoid repetition. Sometimes we try to avoid repetition. If the repetition doesn't serve any special purpose, we need to avoid repetition. Now, in this case, a young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star, full stop. He told his mother about this. Now, the word this is very important. It's a very simple word, easy word, but very potentially very rich word. Because it replaces, it substitutes 10 words. And those 10 words are that he had set his heart on a certain star. If we don't avoid repetition, it will become monotonous. For example,
A young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star. Full stop. He told his mother that he had set his heart on a certain star. And the next sentence is, his mother counseled him to set his heart on a bridge lamp instead. Now, the word instead is very important. This is how we enrich our own vocabulary and we enrich the vocabulary of the learner. Now, let us look at the word instead. Does it serve any purpose? Yes, it does. Which are the words that it makes redundant? For example, instead means his mother counseled him to set his heart on a bridge lamp instead. Instead means instead of setting his heart on a certain star. But if I don't avoid repetition, look at what happens. A young and impressionable moth once set his heart on a certain star, full stop. He told his mother that he had set his heart on a certain star, full stop. His mother counseled him not to set his heart on a certain star, but to set his heart on a bridge lamp instead. So there is a lot of repetition. And we don't communicate like this. But sometimes repetition is useful. It serves a special purpose. Like there is another story called Unicorn in the Garden. I'll just take a sentence or two from the story and then stop. Now, there is a couple in the story, and the title of the story is Unicorn in the Garden. Now, the husband wants to get rid of the wife, and the wife also is very eager to get rid of the husband. They are sick of one another, sick of each other. Now, there is a sentence in the story. She telephoned the police, and she telephoned the psychiatrist. She telephoned the police because she wanted the police to come and take away the husband and put him in a mental asylum. Right? So she telephoned the police and she telephoned the psychiatrist. Now, there is repetition here. She telephoned, the author would have said she telephoned the police and a psychiatrist. Right? She telephoned the police and a psychiatrist, but the author uses repetition. She telephoned the police and she telephoned the psychiatrist. So what is the purpose that is served by this repetition or through this repetition? The purpose that is served is that it creates some sort of excitement. The wife is excited because she thinks that she is now going to get rid of her husband. So in this case, repetition serves a purpose. In the earlier case, repetition doesn't serve any purpose. And we can do a lot of things using a story, using a poem, using an essay, using a novel or a play, full length or feature play or a one-act play, and we can improve the communication skills, our own communication skills, or we can improve the communication skills of our learners. We are very sorry because our time is very short. I had actually planned a longer thing, 45 minutes or so, but we can cover those things during our time of discussion. You can raise issues, you can ask questions, you can offer your comments, and you can share your experiences as teachers, as communicators, as presenters. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we'll have more of your insight and vision once we start with the panel discussion. Moving ahead, we have Dr. J. Mangayakarsi. She is an associate professor of English at Inaugural College for Women, Chennai. She is the national office bearer of LTI and associate member of the IATEFL. Dr. Mayapra Karasi has been selected for Women Researcher Award issued by International Research Awards 2022. She has also been honored with Best Woman Leader Award in 100 Inspirational Women for her extraordinary contribution to the society in 2021. She has several national and international publications in reputed journals. So, madam, we extend our warm welcome to you to please come up here and deliver your keynote address. A big round of applause for madam, please.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Respected dignitaries, on the days and off the days, good afternoon. Most of the speakers articulated well how to carry out and illustrate illustrations in our classrooms to reach out to our millennial students. And we have two finest examples here on the stage. Two millennial classroom learners, two IPS officers are here. When I saw two IPS officers here, ADG and Mr. Kumar IPS, within few minutes, Mr. Kumar, he was just wondering how to deliver and what to communicate to you. Example I would like to cite here to carry out with you a millennial classroom should be like this. You have to integrate whether it is an example, a literature one or anything else, whatever happens in the classroom, even a body language, even silence in classroom. Everything can be interpreted in a different way. Language, it's the finest medium for communication. All of us, we begin with our mother tongue and then we move on to different languages. Sir already made a mention that he handles 4 or 5 languages in the home front, in the professional front, and in academic circle too. So that gives us knowledge, that gives us competency to carry out ourselves in the society. So the way you integrate, that's more important in the classroom, in the Indian classroom. And here, they just using language and literature. Usually, when it comes to communication, we move on to functional English, and we give illustration from just a sentence and other things. When we combine literature, when we cite an example from literature, for example, in Shakespeare, Shakespeare used one sentence, his contribution to English language. There are so many writers contributed, and Sir made a mention, Sir given us more examples from literature. I would like to quote only Shakespeare here, just one sentence, just to refer to young days, salad days, salad days. It will immediately you can connect and so that is, these are the finest examples. We take it from literature and integrate that in millennial classroom. And we have our gadgets and we can easily integrate that in our classroom and carry out and we can learn a lot from our millennial classroom. So with that, I thank the NSHM for the wonderful opportunity to share just a bit of my experience with you all to integrate literature in your ESL classroom. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manga. It is indeed a privilege. I'd like to share before the August gathering here today that we would officially be, having partnering with entire chapter. NSHM will be having the entire chapter both in Kolkata and Durgapur. That will happen eventually. We would now have the panel discussion. After this, we will be having the panel discussion. We have the eminent speakers still seated there. So we thank the August gathering here, especially the delegates seated on the dais today, for your valuable time. Thank you so much, sir.